Good morning, everyone. It is Sunday, October 2nd. Shannon O'Brien, chair of the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission, is our guest this morning. Let's go on the record. A seasoned politician, she now heads an agency that was unthinkable not that long ago. How will she navigate the fast-changing landscape of pot for profit? The chair is in the chair. Let's go on the record.
From WCVB Channel 5, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Welcome to OTR, everyone. I'm Ed Harding, along with News Center 5's political reporter Janet Wu. It's already October. Can you believe it's already October? Our guest this morning is Shannon O'Brien. She's at the roundtable this morning. She is the recently named chair of the State Cannabis Control Commission. She served as Massachusetts treasurer from 99 to 03, Democratic nominee for governor in 02, where Mitt Romney was the winner of that race, also former state senator, state rep. She holds degrees from Yale and Boston University. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me here. It's been a long time since I've been in the studio.
Yeah. Welcome back.
So congratulations on your new job, and not surprisingly, you're already making headlines. You're connected to, or at least you were connected to, two cannabis businesses, one as a part owner and the other as an advisor. Isn't that a conflict of interest as chair of the commission?
Yeah, so it's great to be able to have this conversation with you and not end up on the front page of the Herald, which obviously doesn't make breakfast go down very well for me or my family. But the fact is, I haven't been an owner of a licensee until since December of 2021. I did work with some cannabis applicants looking to get their HCA, their host community agreement, and to get their provisional license. And I was the co-owner and the CEO of a group called Greenfield Greenery. In December this past year, I signed an attestation. I basically gave up all ownership, equity, and control in that company. That attestation is to be filed with the Cannabis Commission. I disclosed all this to the treasurer. I talked to the folks at ethics because I have no ownership and control. I have no conflict, but out of an abundance of caution, anything to do with any group that I've worked with, I will recuse myself in the future.
So why has it taken so long for all the paperwork to come through? Because on paper, you are still associated with these groups.
Yes. The fact is, I gave my attestation to the company. It was supposed to have been filed last December. I haven't spoken to the people on this team in almost a year, and so I am not sure why it took them so long to file this. But basically, this is the ownership and the equity. Who owns this company? Who controls it? I have nothing to do with it. But the Cannabis Commission has to approve this change of ownership.
To be clear, none of it is in your family? Or is some of it in your family?
No, nothing.
No, not even.
I signed an agreement giving up all equity, ownership, and control.
Not even in any level of your family?
No, nothing.
Future stock options?
Nothing. Nope, give it all up.
Why has the commission not done a better job of explaining this? Or why has this not been out there that you've severed all relations since you started the interview process?
Again, when I applied, this was in my application. I told this to the treasurer. I think there was a little bit of a miscommunication between the communications folks at the Cannabis Commission and the Herald. As a matter of fact, the reporter sent me an email. I think he forgot the apostrophe in my name and it bounced back. So again, I feel bad that there was that lack of communication with the Herald, because I think maybe I would have only been on page 3 rather than page 1. But anyway, no ownership, no control, no equity, and out of an abundance of caution, I will recuse myself from any decisions. But I think that this experience, I actually was criticized at first when it was announced that I was taking this position, that I had no experience, I didn't understand. I've been on the other side of things. I've been an applicant. It's a complex process. It's difficult to raise money because it's not legal on the national level. So I'm hoping that I bring a little bit of understanding for these entrepreneurs, but in particular, understanding the problem that equity candidates have. How are we going to address that?
So let's talk about this. It's a very young commission, just in terms of actual age. It's already faced criticism in and of itself for not approving many licenses to racial minority-owned groups. So does this need to change, and what else does the commission need to do to make it more equitable and profitable for taxpayers?
Well, again, I'm just only a couple of weeks on the job, so I want to be very cautious about how I approach some of these answers. But the recent legislation that was passed by the legislature does a couple of things. But most important, it creates, and this does not come under the Cannabis Commission, it's separate under Executive Office of Housing and Development. But there is going to be a fund that will provide grants and loans loans to diverse candidates looking to get some of that funding. It's really hard. You can't just walk down to a bank right now because it's illegal on the federal level. You know, normally I want to open up my hairdresser. I'm a great hairdresser.
Right.
I've got a little bit of money from my family, loan that to me. You can't do that with this kind of business.
It's federally protected, absolutely.
Yes. So
Right.
here, this will be a way for diverse equity candidates to be able to get some access to those resources that we think is part of the gap in being able to get that equity. Big companies from out of Massachusetts, you know, multi-state operators, they've got millions, billions of dollars. This is not a problem for them. It is a problem for the small entrepreneurs, but especially those diverse candidates who they haven't been shut out, but it has been particularly difficult for them to gather that capital to make these businesses go.
I really want to talk about politics. I mean, after all, your political acumen.
I know
is
that
part of-
better.
I was going to say is
Yeah.
probably the
Ooh,
bigger
I'm
part
much
of
better.
your
Yeah,
resume
yeah,
at
yeah,
this
yeah.
point in time. More than 2 decades ago, you became the first woman to ever hold a statewide position in Massachusetts as state treasurer.
As treasurer, but Evelyn Murphy, give her due.
Oh, that's true, that's true. She
Evelyn
wasn't-
Murphy
I-
was
I
the
forgot
first,
about that.
but
You're
I was the
absolutely
first
right.
one sort of independently elected to an office. She got elected as part of a team with Governor Dukakis. But
That's true.
Evelyn had a much tougher road than I did. So.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm glad you corrected
Thank
me
you.
there. But you almost became governor a few years later as a result of that. Today, it looks like all of our constitutional officers may be women next year. We don't know yet because the election's still a few weeks away.
Except Bill Galvin.
With the exception of Bill Galvin, who's Secretary of State so far. He might win his re-election. Is the glass ceiling gone in Massachusetts, do you think?
I don't think it's gone, but we've made a lot of progress, and I do think that I don't know if there were the same. I think there were different hurdles when I was there, and I used to give this speech, and close your eyes and think about a governor, and the image in your head is not going to be a woman, and even though, you know, since 1925 the United States has only had 44 women who've served as governor, you know, there are some great examples. You know, there are 9 women right now who are governors of different states, and so I think that it is now easier for people to sort of feel comfortable. They've seen more examples of women not only leading but leading well, and so I think it makes that barrier, that glass ceiling, a little bit easier to break through. So I don't think we're exactly where we want to be, but you know, the proof is in the pudding. We have women leading most of these races, and except for the Secretary of State's office, it looks like it will, you know, likely all be led by women.
The schism between the two major parties is more pronounced than ever. I think that's fair to say. The loudest voices are the Trump Republicans, and in your party, the progressives and the far left. So do Democrats need to move toward the middle to win independence? Do you think there's a shift that's necessary?
I think the most important thing that the Democrats can do is talk about the record of success that's been happening, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's, you know, reducing, you know, working to reduce the cost of drugs, whether it's, you know, climate change. I mean, the story of the hurricane coming up the East Coast, the devastation in Florida. I think there are going to be a few more converts to believing in, you know, climate change science and what that means to you. When your entire community, you know, can be wiped out in one storm, you might have a little bit of a different opinion on that particular political issue.
But is there winning sort of like argument going to be abortion, do you think, in this election?
I think that more people are putting abortion, you know, it used to be that abortion was a little bit further down in terms of their number one issue. A growing number of men and women from you know, both sides of the aisle have considered that a more important issue. What I think is even more problematic, and I think it'll be interesting to see where the advertising in these campaigns is, we're now going beyond abortion. You know, in Idaho, you know, it now is going to be a crime if a University of Idaho student is seeking contraception and it's provided. So that issue goes far beyond some of the privacy issues that we're talking about just with abortion, and I think that many more people will be concerned about that. So it's going to be interesting to see what the advertising is.
I want to ask you the next question about the MBTA. And I understand that you're not in control of the MBTA, but you live in Massachusetts.
I ride the train.
You ride the train,
I ride
right?
the train.
It's in severe crisis. The overarching theory is that the immediate problems were corrected, perhaps, but system-wide repairs and replacements have been effectively neglected. This is an if. If you had been elected governor at the turn of the century in 2002, what would you have done differently to prevent, mitigate, avoid today's crisis?
Well, it's really hard for me to say. It's sort of funny. There is a report being done on the Big Dig right now, and I actually was interviewed for this 25-year retrospective. And this is actually one of the roots of the problem, is that we took so long to tell the truth about what the cost of the Big Dig was. So the only thing I can say at this point in time, 20 years past, on what I would have done differently is what I did when I was treasurer, is you have to tell the truth about the numbers. You have to hold people accountable. I was able to at least be part of the group of people saying, tell the truth. $1 billion off. You can't be $1 billion off and then still make sure that you can properly finance it and fund it. So I think it's honesty, transparency, and then holding people accountable. But I don't have a specific answer.
Shannon O'Brien is with us this morning. We're on the record. The OTR Pop Quiz is next.